hope you feel relaxed. Meditation in Happy Science is very powerful, especially now that I'm in New York. This Alcantara statue, having this in this prayer hall is very, very, very special. Doing your meditation or self-reflection or prayers in this room is so different doing it from your homes. So every once in a while, please come to the temple and feel the connection with Lord Alcantara or the high spirits. So, today's topic, the hell you never knew. It's based on this new book that has been published, Master Okawa, The Hell You Never Knew. Who's read this book so far? Just a few, yeah, because it's still new. It was published like last month, or 2 months ago, maybe? 1 month ago, yeah. But, so what did you think of the title, The Hell You Never Knew? Well, let me ask a question. How much do you know about hell? Anyone? What's up? Nothing. Not depends, okay.
Because like the Bible says one thing, then Dante's Inferno says another thing, and other religions have their own perception of hell.
Right. Buddhism and Hinduism, Islam, they have a different, I don't know too much about Hinduism, but they have really different views of hell. But hell is a place or a thing that's been told in all religions. Pretty much all religions talks about hell. And of course, Happy Science is talking about it too. And today, my goal is for all of you to grasp that hell exists. And however, I don't want you to take it in a way that it's like a threat, that if you don't believe in this, you're going to fall. No, it's not like that. And I think you're going to understand that after you read this book and also through today's workshop. I think you'll understand that it's not a concept of threat, but it really exists. That's why all saviors has been giving caution to mankind that you have to live in a correct way not to fall there so that you won't suffer. And today's main points, it's made out of 5 points. First, we're going to go over the general teachings of hell in Happy Science that was taught before this book. And then, secondly, I'm going to be introducing to all of you the different types of hells that is explained in this book, because that's what's really interesting, right? A little scary, but very interesting. And then the third point is why this is important for us, knowing about hell. I mean, why? Why is it important? And then 4, how to avoid falling to hell. Of course, we don't want to fall to hell. And then lastly, Master gave a lecture on this book, and we have an excerpt of it. It's about 10 minutes, so we're going to watch that in the end. But before we begin, let's just let's watch this little video that explains what the spiritual world is like. It's a 1.5 minute video.
The structure of the world we live in is multidimensional. The physical world, which we call this world, is the 3rd dimension. The spirit world begins from the 4th dimension, the posthumous realm, where life is still similar to this world. So-called hell is a part of this 4th dimensional realm. Spiritually more awakened spirits, who leave their physical attachments, move up to the 5th dimension, the realm of the good. The 6th dimension, the realm of light, is the world of distinguished leaders. The 7th dimension, the Bodhisattva realm or angelic realm, is the world of angels and bodhisattvas. The 8th dimension, the Tathagata realm or great angel realm, is the world of great guiding spirits of light. Above that is the ninth dimension, the cosmic realm, which is the world of saviors. Which realm you return to after death is determined by your state of mind. According to the law of the same wavelengths attraction, people who share a similar state of mind form a realm. Heaven and hell exist in our mind. People who live with a good heart return to heaven, and those who live with a negative heart fall to hell.
All right, thank you very much. So, as Master Okawa has, that video is based on Master Okawa's teachings, obviously, and Master Okawa has taught us that hell is a very small place in the spiritual world. Now, that's a very important concept that is taught in Happy Science. Traditionally, in a lot of traditional religions, they talk about hell as like the equal force as heaven, you know? Like the gods and angels are always battling the devils and demons in hell. And it's like a dualistic world. That's called dualism. But a lot of religion talks about the spiritual world from a dualistic perspective. Yes, there's positive energy and negative energy, right? And that's, if I rephrase that from a religious term, God-oriented energy or not God-oriented energy. That's all it is. It's whether you're facing towards God or you're not facing towards Him. It's simply two directions. So it's true that it is dualistic, that there are two different energies, classifying the energies as good and bad. However, it's not a big, huge place that is as strong as God, okay? That's very important. God is embracing hell. He's allowing hell to exist. I will talk about that more later, but please just grasp that concept that hell is not as big as heaven. Now, let's move on to the first topic of today, the general teachings of hell that are taught in Happy Science. HS is a Happy Science. First point, hell was not created by God. The second point, mechanism of the spirit world. Third point, not a place of punishment. And fourthly, different hell according different thoughts. I made this PowerPoint yesterday, and I don't know what I meant by that, but I think I will be able to explain later. So those are the main points. Now let me bring it back to this camera for the YouTube people. All right, so the first point was hell was not created by God. That's, I think, amazing to know. Hell was not created by God. There has been this long, in theology and like a lot of philosophers has been talking, why does evil exist and why does hell exist? Because if hell exists, why is God so punishing? I thought the Almighty God is full of mercy and full of love. Then why is He going to create a place to just purposely punish us? Why is He so sadistic? You know, that was like a battle of, that's still ongoing. But if you read the laws of the sun, our, in a way, Happy Science's Bible, he talks about the creation of this universe in the first chapter. It's like the new Genesis that's been taught by El Cantare, Master Okawa. And what he's saying is that initially, there was no such place as hell. There was just a spiritual realm. And if you look at the history of how this universe was created, the higher dimension created the lower dimension. So the primordial Buddha, or the creator, or God, lives or exists in a 20 or something higher dimension. From there, he created the 13th dimensional universe, and then the 12th dimensional universe, and then the 11th dimension, and then the 10th dimension, and then the 9th dimension. And when he created this ninth dimension, he also created a place called a third dimension, which is this physical world. This physical world. Why did he create this third dimensional world? Because in the spiritual world, it's a world of like attracts like. So it's a world of same wavelengths attracting same wavelengths. So you're always living by people who are similar to you. And if you're always living by people who are similar to you, you can't increase your knowledge or your wisdom as a soul. Therefore, he created this three-dimensional world so people can be born into this physical body to go through training of the soul by meeting people with different diverse values. And by doing so, we are trying to learn what is right and what is wrong, what is towards God and what is not towards God. And by gaining that wisdom, we reach higher dimensions when we go back to the other world. So this is the system of reincarnation. It's a system of educating our souls, right? Good so far? So then, there was no hell at first. However, God has given each and every one of us something called a free will. Complete freedom of what to think. He doesn't restrict that whatsoever. Because if he restricts that, again, it will beat the purpose of learning what's right and wrong. If we were created to know what's always right, there's no growth for our soul because we're like robots, right? God didn't create human beings as robots to always do something that is right. He gave us the freedom to even do bad things so that we can learn what is better. And that is more fruitful for our soul training. So then, we were given the free will, but when a free will crashes with another free will, that is when evil starts. You know, like a human relationship. If you're living all by yourself on an island, there will be no such human relationship issues. But because we live in a society, we meet other people, we see different values, that's when different values clash, and then our mind turns negative sometimes. From a negative remark, from a negative thought, whatever, right? So, because human beings were created with free will, because they clashed, and they created this negative energy, and when they were not able to heal that negative energy before death, that negative energy stays on that person's mind. And then when you go back to the spiritual world, what you have in the mind manifests. Therefore, if you have accumulated a lot of negative energy, that is going to manifest in your spiritual world. In the spiritual world, your outward, how you are seen or how you look is a reflection of your thoughts. What you look like is the reflection of your thoughts. So if you had negative thoughts, that's going to manifest as your appearance and where you're going to be living. And hence, hell was created. So we are the ones, humans are the ones who created this place called hell. And then, so I talked about the mechanism of the spiritual world just now. So what you think is who you are, what you think is what's going to be your appearance in the spiritual world. And now, hell is not a place of punishment. This is a very new concept, I think, from a Western civilization. Because in the West, what we're taught is if you do bad deeds, you're going to be punished in hell. You're going to be burning in hell forever. So don't do this, right? So it's a place of punishment. It's a scary place. That's how we think. That's how we're taught. But wrong. It's not. Master said, like, it's not a place of punishment, but it's also a place, it's like a hospital for our souls. It's a hospital for our souls. Meaning, like I told you earlier, what you think manifests in the spiritual world. Therefore, if you can change how you think, you can be saved from hell. Once you fall to hell, you're doomed forever. Wrong. False narrative. Completely wrong. Because that is depriving humans' most important quality as a child of God that human beings can create through the power of thought. And this continues on to the spiritual world. If you have good thoughts, you can create a better world, better surroundings. So, then, why does God still allow hell to exist, right? What's the purpose of it? Why is it a hospital? Now, here's the thing. Have you ever met someone in your life who you feel that this person's going to fall to hell if he or she dies? Have you ever met someone like that? Yes? Or are we all too kind to say yes? We feel that, but we're too kind to say yes. I think, or if you look at the news, if you find a serial killer, do you think that person's going to go back to heaven? Or let's say you see a suicide bomber, like terrorists. Do you think those people are going to go to heaven? No, right? Consciously, we think that, no, that person is going back to a negative place. Now, these type of people, because they weren't able to awaken to what is God's direction while they were alive, they're going to fall to hell, and they're going to manifest the same type of tendency of the mind that they had during they were alive. And then it's going to manifest vividly, clearly in front of them. So I'm going to be explaining the different types of hells, but one of them is a hell of scorching heat, a hell of scorching heat. And also there's a hell of strife. Let's say that someone was living with a strong anger, and they're very aggressive. They're always hurting other people. They would go to a place that thought energy is manifested as heat. They're going to be living in a place of, volcanic place. It is fires everywhere. And also the people around them are also going to be like them. Very aggressive, violent, and they're going to continue hurting each other. Why does that exist? Because usually it's said that for normal souls from a shallow part of hell, they will be able to come out of hell in 200 to 300 years. Meaning, they will be able to change their mindset in average about 200, 300 years. How does this happen? While they were alive, they didn't know that they were doing something wrong. But when you go to the spiritual world, where they manifested as a place of hell, they finally start noticing, after repeating the same crime over and over again, going through the suffering of not being able to die even after you get killed or you kill someone, they just resurrect again. And because it's in the spiritual world, they have no physical body. You can't die. You continue this violence over and over and over again. And then eventually these souls are going to realize, what am I doing? Why is this continuing? Is something wrong with me? And that's the moment of salvation, because they can reflect on the mistakes that they were making. And in order for the souls to understand their own mistakes, hell exists. All right? Hell exists so that the souls can understand the mistakes they were making. And then once they realize that, once they repent on that, once they self-reflect on that, they will be able to escape. Therefore, it's not a punishment. It's like a rehabilitation center for our souls so that we can reawaken to the true energy as a child of God and go back to the heavenly world. Now, even though I did explain a little bit about it, let me show you, let's go on to the second point of today, the different types of hells that are introduced in this book. This isn't all of them, but it, goes over a lot of the different hells that's explained by Master Okawa. And for those of you who's watching this video for the first time on YouTube, Master Okawa is a spiritual person, spiritual master, so he can always, leave his body and kind of like travel around the spiritual world. So what's explained here is his first-hand experience. All of these are what he saw, what he heard, what he felt is this list. Now let's first look at the Hell of Villains. Hell of Villains. I'm sorry for the disturbing picture, but this is what it really literally looks like. Now what's so interesting about this book is that he kind of like, he writes it like in a novel, like his experience through the spiritual world. And I won't be, of course I won't be able to read all of them in the list, but just for this first one, please allow me to read how he explains this Hell of Villains. It's on page 31 to page 33. This is hell, the Hell of Villains. This is hell, but still a shallow part. The sky is dull and gray. It seems like it is dusk or before daybreak. The scenery is somewhat blurry, but still clear enough to recognize things. I can see a river nearby. It gives off a rather foul smell, and I get an uneasy feeling. Sure enough, many dead human bodies lie in the shallow waters, and there is even a corpse with a hand reaching out into the empty air. But once I get closer, the bodies I thought were corpses are actually writhing in the water. They are still alive. As I observe this scene, I hear screams coming from the upper part of the river. I look up and see about 20 people chasing a couple, a man and a woman, coming in my direction. The couple is then caught at the foot of a bridge and tied there with rope. Both the man and the woman are only wearing worn-out, mud-covered kimonos. The man is bleeding from his forehead. Suddenly, a booming voice is heard. It is from the largest man among the chasers. He is about 3 meters, 10 feet in height. His arms are immensely thick, maybe double the thickness of one of my thighs. His face, illuminated by torchlight, is exactly like that of red ogres we heard about in old stories, the only difference being that he has no horns. He even has what looks like fangs sticking out of his mouth. By command of the large man, 5 men start to sharpen their swords on the riverside. Their swords have large blades, like Chinese broadswords. They grind edges on these swords using whetstones, dipping and rinsing them in the river. The awful metallic sounds of grinding blades ring through the icy air. The poor couple had actually been exploited like slaves by the red ogre. They run away, but only to be chased down and captured again. I will leave it to the imagination how the couple's was, then cut up with the broadswords and their bodies thrown into the river. Apparently, this place is the Hell of Villains, which is governed by the fear of anything related to the harm of the physical body. It is a world of fear in which you never know when your life will be taken. In modern terms, you call it the world of sadists and masochists. The young couple who were killed in this case will continually get killed by the ogres until they realize that their lives are eternal and imperishable. In this sense, the ogres are their teachers. On the other hand, the ogres will kill the same person again and again until they begin to understand the meaninglessness of taking lives in anger. In this sense, the murdered couple also serve as teachers for the ogres. My visit to this hell of villains made me keenly aware that humans need to be free of fear to be happy. The inhabitants will continue killing each other in this realm for 200 or 300 years until they finally realize that humans are children of God and have eternal life. After getting weary of killing, some will awaken to the truth and go up to heaven, while others will harden in their cruelty and fall into a deeper part of hell. It is rare for the inhabitants to stay there for 400 or 500 years. In most cases, as I just said, they will move on to their next phase after 200 or 300 years. The opportunity to save these spirits comes at this turning point of after 200 to 300 years, so we must take advantage of this timing. When they become tired of the slaughter and start to question their behavior, angels of light will come to persuade them of the truth. It seems that, to a certain extent, God values salvation through one's own effort, even in this realm, and implements a system in which angels intervene for the first time when the inhabitants' hearts start to turn toward God. So that was the description that Master uses one of his guiding spirits to give that description. But how do you feel? Very vivid, isn't it? Very clear. And you may want to ask, why did those two couples end up in hell, the one who were being killed and tortured? Master says that after he did a spiritual reading on these two, he's saying that the couples, the victims, were actually a pair of lovers while alive, who were forbidden to marry and eloped, but ultimately committed suicide together. Maybe their fears were strongly felt when they ran away. So that fear continued on after death, after they committed suicide. And that's why it's appearing into this situation. And also for the ogre side, they used to be humans. They didn't look like ogres at first, but they were probably in some kind of a crime, I don't know, syndicate, whatever, gangs, and they were continuing violence, and they died out of anger. And usually, killing others also comes out of fear, because you don't want to be killed. If you're an aggressive person, you'll kill the other. If you're a passive person, you'll run away. But both is based on fear. So this hell of villains is coming out from the thought of fear, and they weren't able to awaken that that was a wrong mindset. And that's why they're manifesting it themselves after going back to the spiritual world. The next one is very interesting. It's never been explained in other types of religions or in traditional religions. It's called the subterranean hell. The subterranean hell. So these are people who were afraid of society, people who were afraid of meeting other people. And we see a lot of salaried workers these days who has to go to work because they need to get their payments, but they're always secluding themselves. They're just doing their work mechanically, and they don't want to talk to people. They're afraid of their bosses, they're afraid of their subordinates, they're afraid of their colleagues, and they come home and they don't have much conversation with the family. Maybe they don't have families, and then they die lonely with fear of meeting other people. And that's called anthropophobia. Anthropophobia. A phobia, or like what you're afraid of meeting other people. And as you can see in the picture, the person on the left, the blue picture, you know how he's wearing a tie and it's like a suit? So you can see that this is a modern hell. It is a hell that was created modernly when people were so secluded in this competitive society. They're afraid to show themselves. And that is appearing in this subterranean hell. And it's like, they're like moles. They're moles, right? And they're all so fearful. So every 200, 300 years, there's going to be a moment to awaken, right? Depending on the person. So when the angels of light come to save them from their holes, because they're so fearful of other people, the angels don't look like angels to them. The angels look like devils to them. Why? Because what you think manifests in the spiritual world. Because they're so afraid, fearful of other beings. Even if it's an angel, it looks like a devil, and they continue to stay in that hole. And Master has been telling us in this book that there's been a big meeting in heaven between the angels of light of how to save these people in this newly made modern hell. Even in heaven, they're having a hard time helping these people out of hell. And then the next one, this is actually famous from traditional Buddhism, but Hell of Mortar. Hell of Mortar. So you know what a mortar is? It's like a cylinder-shaped, I don't know. It's like, you know how when you grind meat or sausage, you put the meat on top, you grind it, and then it comes out a sausage? Kind of like that. Hell of Mortar. And Master is saying like this place is like 100 meters in feet, like 330 feet in length, in diameter. And people are trying to crawl up. Why? Because at the bottom of it, there is like a boiling lava. And then the rocks are sliding, so they're sliding down. So they want to crawl up. Now, what is going on in this hell? What is the manifestation of that person's mind? So they're all crawling up, and when you're about to, crawl up, the rocks are sliding. So what you do is you pull someone else's ankles. You pull someone else's body to try to go up. And let's say that you're able to go above them. You get pulled down again by them. And they continue this for 200 and 300 years. What's the manifestation? Egoists. They're only thinking about themselves. They're only searching for their success or for them to be promoted. And so Master is saying that he was very sad to see that these people that are in this hell are modern business elites. They had income. They had status. But it was on behalf of other people's suffering. They pulled down their colleagues. I don't know what they did. They cheated. They deceived others. And then let's say that they weren't able to fix that mindset till the end of their life. They're unfortunately going to go to a realm like this and continue pulling each other down. Once they awaken that, let's all work together to get out, they can all escape. But they haven't noticed the virtue of helping others before helping yourself. So that's the Hell of Mortar. The next one, this is also famous, a Hell of Beasts. A Hell of Beasts. So This is a place of hell where humans who lost their dignity as a human being fall to. What does it mean to lose your dignity as a human being? It means that they lived only by their animal instincts or desires. They lived only by their animal instincts or desires. So let's say that there was a very greedy person. You know how greed is very ugly, right? When you see someone who's so greedy, you don't want to be with them. It's a negative energy, right? But some people, they can't control their greed. They want more and more and more. And those type of people, when they fall to hell, they turn into pigs, just continuing to eat whatever there is. Because this isn't Japanese anime, maybe not many people saw it, but Spirited Away. It was an Academy Award-winning Japanese animated movie, Spirited Away. In one of the scenes, the main character's mother and father, she ends up in like a half spiritual, half three-dimensional world, and they're continuing to eat Chinese food there. And then the main character, she walks away. When she comes back, she notices that they've turned into pigs, just continuing to eat. Very, I think that got the inspiration from this. Also, these animals are forms it's like a symbolic characteristic of that person's negative energy. So besides pigs, what are there? There are stray dogs. Stray dogs. Not like cute pet dogs that we have, right? Stray dogs. So maybe we don't see any stray dogs in New York, but if you've seen in movies and stuff, when there's a lot of places with stray dogs, they're always eating something out of a trash can. Right? So what is this? What kind of people turn into dogs in this Hell of Beasts? It's the people who had the tendency to steal things. Dogs. Yeah, that's what they do. They steal things that's not their own. So like when you know how sometimes when you're in a big company, there are people who quietly steals like the pens and like paper clips and, those thoughts can manifest of you being as a dog. Or also people who cheats on scores, like Master was talking about his colleague when he used to, because Master wasn't always a spirit, in Happy Science. He used to work in a trading company. And one of his colleagues, he can see there was a dog always haunting him, attracting a dog spirit. And then Master found out that that person had the tendency to cheat on golf scores. So, that little cheat, sneaky kind of thing, and it manifests as a dog, stray dog. Also, what's famous are snakes. Snakes. Let's say that person was filled with jealousy and suspicion. They turn into snakes in the afterlife. And also, another one is, famous one is a fox. You know how there's even a word, foxy, a foxy person. And that means cunning, sly, and deceptive, or two-faced, or double-tongued. These type of people who are always deceiving others, lying to others for their own ego, personal gain, they turn into fox in the spiritual world. And it's very hard to save these people because after the first decade or couple decades in hell, they still remember that they're human beings, but eventually they even forget that they used to be human beings. And they see themselves as a snake or a pig or a dog. So again, it's very hard to save these people. How can they break away from that and go to a higher heavenly world, go back to heaven? It's simple. Regain the dignity of being human being. Master has been teaching us, even in Christianity it is taught, that there's a clear difference between human beings and animals. What is it? Human beings have faith. And we can act for others before trying to save ourselves. That is a noble human dignity. And by regaining that, they can come out of this hell. Now let's move on to the next one. The Hell of Scorching Heat. I think we're going through this in New York City right now. It's 100 degrees today, right? It's a hell of scorching heat. Just imagine that you have to be out there for 200 and 300 years in that heat with no oasis, with no water, and with no air conditioning. Would you want to go to a place like that? No. All right. So how do we prevent ourselves from going to the hell of scorching heat? This is a place people who had craving, excessive craving, greed, never content, and was never satisfied. These type of covetous, or how do you say, greedy type of people end up in this kind of hell. Why? Why? Why is it so hot in that place? What's the manifestation of greed? It's the burning desire that turns into this heat. It was a very negative burning desire, material desire for promotion. And whatever they get, they continued wanting to get. Never content, never feeling grateful, just wanting to get ahead and ahead. Those types of people, because of their desire, that flame is all over the place. And Master says it's also like a desert. And it's a very humid desert, not a dry desert. And there's no water, and you just continue crawling around, seeking for water. But, the water is like a symbol of seeking for something what they want, and it doesn't appear. So that's the hell of scorching heat. Next, the hell of lust. This makes sense, right? So on page 88, Master explains, the hell of lust is a destination for those who committed mistaken sexual acts and were led by lust, like having extramarital affairs. They anguish in a pond of blood, which is why this hell is also known as the hell of bloody pond. So as you can see, they're like just squirming in the blood, continuing that kind of sexual act until they notice that it is pointless to do this. And there, in another, it wasn't described in this book, but in another book, when Master hovered over the hell of lust, the people who were squirming in the bloody pond, they looked like worms, just like mingling around in each other. So it's very nasty, but let's say that human beings weren't able to get out of this desire, that's where they end up. However, Master does explain that the same action can produce different results depending on the situation spiritually. So let's say that you are a very loving couple, or let's say that you are married. If a married couple or a loving couple, has sex, that's nothing bad because that's showing your affection. But let's say that you continue that with like numerous number of people, and that's why is it negative? Because think about the person who was cheated. Think about the scar that's going to be left on that person, right? I mean, egotistically, you can be like, this modern Hollywood culture that they're showing right now, the hookup culture, that's terrible. They're trying to create this negative culture right now that it's okay to always, be going around having sex with people, but that hurts a lot of people's minds. And of course, it comes with negative diseases. So that's why Master is saying, like, if it's in a certain situation, it's fine. But if it's in another situation, it's bad. Let me give another example. Let's say that, in the time of history, there are a lot of times of war, right? And when you go to war, you're forced to kill the other person. Now, is that a sin? Actually, from a spiritual value, it's not a sin because they were ordered by their commander to protect their country to do it. So it's a little different when you kill someone during time of war and just killing someone in the streets and, in a peaceful time. So just please, there's another different type of way of looking at things. Just one pointer I wanted to add. Let's move on to the next hell. Hell of strife. This is a hell of places of fear. So modernly, there has been a lot of terrorism that's been occurring in the East and the West, and not just in the Middle East. All over the places there's been terrorism by different religions. And not even religions, but so when people die from that, because of the fear, they continue it. In this book, Master explains how in his dream he flew over to this one hell of strife, one type of hell of strife, and it was like a European, like a bullet train. It was very peaceful. The outside was a very peaceful, scenery, and a lot of Europeans were inside the train. But all of a sudden, there was this huge explosion, and then Master even remembers the heat, the burn that he got in his arm in this dream, or while he was there in his spiritual journey. But that kind of war, hell is continuing now. For people who didn't know that they are spiritual beings, they continue that fear in the hellish world. But let's say that they had faith. They will understand that it is hell, so they'll be able to escape. Next one, hell of hungry ghosts. To the picture that you see on the right is the traditional type. It's like little beasts with bloated belly. So you know how when you are excessively hungry, you know how your belly bloats? So this is an expression of people who died from famine, people who died from hunger. There are a lot of those people back in history, but let's say that they didn't have faith, they would end up looking like that kind of a beast. To the left, it's a very modern type of Hell of Hungry Ghosts. So as you can see, it's little children being taken away their candy, their food, or their games that they want to play by a big, gigantic man. So this is a hell that Master saw in his dream again. So what does this explain? The little kids who weren't able to achieve the results in entrance exams, and let's say that they committed suicide because of that. Now, in a high-class society, everyone's into education, right? Their parents want their kids to go to good places, and that can turn into pressure sometimes, strong peer pressure. And when the children cannot achieve those goals, they sometimes commit suicide. Or let's say that they've died with this kind of animosity from a fatal accident. They would go to this realm, and what it looks like is they're eating, their candy, the food that they like, or they're playing games that they like to play, but then this big man would come and take it away from them, and they won't be able to get it. What this means, what this is showing, is not the pain of not getting what you want. The pain of not getting what you want. That creates suffering. Suffering is a negative energy, and it manifests in hell like this. And then lastly, the abysmal hell. The abysmal hell. So ancient times, it looked like a very long tunnel deep in the ground, and you were isolated. It's also called the hell of isolation. In modern times, it's like a hospital room. So what is this? The people who are philosophers or religious leaders who had a lot of influence in thought, who misguided people, fall to the abysmal hell. They're secluded because their philosophy is so negative that they are secluded and confined in different places. Master did a spiritual message from one man, one famous philosopher who fell to hell, and an excerpt of it is introduced in this book, and that is Friedrich Nietzsche. Did I pronounce that right? Nietzsche. Famous German philosopher, right? But Austria, maybe. So Nietzsche, he has fallen to this abysmal hell because he is so famous and influential. I mean, it is said that he's the one who created Hitler and the Nazis. But that kind of a person, because of his negative philosophy, has fallen to hell, the abysmal hell. So, those are the different hells that's been explained in this book. Pretty scary? How you feel?
I'm surprised I didn't know that there are so many distinctions.
Right, it's very clear distinctions in different hells. Very surprising, right? But it makes sense because Master said what you think manifests in the spiritual world. And that's what it's manifesting. Symbolically, it's manifesting. So, now let's move on to the third point of today. Why is this important? Why are we learning about these different types of hell? Like I said, it is not to scare you, right? It is not to make you fearful, but it is for the purpose of salvation. It's the purpose of salvation. In this book, Master says, knowing is immense power. Knowing is immense power. I mean, think about it. All these people in these different types of hell, if only they knew this before they were alive, they would be aware of what's going on to them. And hence, they'd be able to escape so much quickly. And also, they'd be able to prevent falling to that kind of place in the first place. Therefore, religion, Master has once said, is a very practical education, because these spiritual teachings becomes all and everything after you pass away. Literally, your awareness changes everything. Therefore, grasping faith, high-level faith, while here on earth leads to salvation, for yourselves and others. In the spiritual world, you can contact people by their names, by thinking about them, by thinking about their faces. So let's say that you have an unfortunate family member or someone you know close by who you feel that if that person lived in that way, they probably weren't able to pass over to heaven but fell to hell. For those type of people, if you think about them and if you read this book with them, they're going to acquire the knowledge with you. Meaning, you can save the people in hell directly. That's why Master is saying knowledge is immense power. So it leads to salvation. Next, where does heaven and hell exist? In the very opening video that I showed, you know how it said, real quickly, heaven and hell exists in the mind. That's true. In the spiritual world, there is no distance. There's no distance. So it's not like on a world map in this part of Pacific Ocean, there is hell. It's not like that. It coexists simultaneously in a way in one place. It's all a matter of frequency. Therefore, let's say that you have a very greedy mind. In that moment, your mind is already inside this hell of scorching heat. Let's say that your mind is filled with lust, uncontrollable, mistaken lust. Your mind is already connected to the hell of lust. That's what Master means when he says heaven and hell exist inside your mind. Now, why is this important? Because there is a principle of the universe that no one can define. That is called the principle of possession. Whatever a frequency the mind has, it is always attracting. Whether you're aware of it or not, whatever you have in your mind, you're always attracting the same frequency. And that is how possession occurs, by negative spirits, or evil, or demons, or devils. What's inside the mind is attracting it. So, if you want to be cleared away from negative energy, the first thing you must do is not pray, but reflect. That's the first step. That's the difference of happy science and other religions. Because we know that this is the fastest way to fix it. Reflect on your mind, and then you can repel negative energy. Switch that mindset. You're unconsciously attracting it. What is it? What's that negative factor inside your mind that you're holding on to that's attracting this negative energy is what we must think. Which leads to the fourth point of today, how to avoid hell. Self-reflection and studying books of truth by Master Okawa. I will confidently tell you this. The reason why I'll tell you later. But let's look at self-reflection. Simply put, the most, because self-reflection may be hard. So what's my negative energy that I could have in my mind? Master says, just if happy science teachings is too much to learn from, just go back to these 3 points, which is called the 3 poisons of the mind. Check whether you have greed, anger, or ignorance. Greed, anger, or ignorance. What is greed? It is excessive desire, or craving for more than one deserves. Craving for more than one deserves. Now, the hard part about greed is it's so hard to notice by yourself. You can see it easily in others, but you can't see it in yourself. That's why it's hard. So, because a lot of people, when I say you have to reflect on your greed, a lot of people, the first thing they tell me is, I'm not greedy. I always have this. Wherever I go, even in LA, in New York, anywhere, in Japan, they're like, I'm not greedy. Or in Japan, a little different, but they always say, Americans always say, I'm not greedy. But, like I said earlier, it's easy to see in others than in yourself. So, in order to be able to self-reflect on this, let's look at the other side of greed. It's a heart filled with gratitude, and contentment. Contentment. You're happy with what you have. Do you have these states of mind? When it comes to human relationships, when a human relationship sours, it's usually because you're craving more from them and you're not focusing on what you were given. When I say it like this, I'm sure it's so hard to say that I'm not greedy. So that's the first point, greed, reflecting on greed. Do you have a grateful heart and a contentment? Anger. This is obvious, right? Anger. It's obvious and yet hard to control. Obvious that it's negative, but it's still hard to control. Now let's look at the mechanism of why human beings become angry. First, usually it's coming out of the desire of protection. You're trying to protect yourself. What do I mean? So let's say that someone criticizes you, gives you a negative remark. We don't want to accept that negative remark, so we fight back to protect our dignity. We fight back so we can protect our hearts so it won't get hurt. And then you say something back out of anger. You see, this is coming out of self-protection. So that's the mechanism of anger, simply put. So then what are you supposed to do? When a negative factor occurs in your situation, such as negative criticism, when you receive it, don't fly in rage. Master always says, shut up for 10 seconds. Well, he doesn't say shut up. That's my way of accepting his teachings. He says, don't try to say anything for 10 seconds. But for me, it's like, just shut up for 10 seconds. Stop. Like, gulp in that anger. Take like 10 deep breaths. And then you'll feel that your anger is gone. So the point is, try to control that anger when it's about to come out. It's hard because we all have animalistic tendencies. Animals, if you look at them, they're always angry. Hikari, my wife, she has a very cute dog. She's like a little fluffy, teeny tiny dog, right? And she's like super cute, and like everyone in the temple calls her a princess because she looks like princess. When she takes a picture, she always poses like this also. So she's like a princess dog, right? And dogs are really, really cute. But she loves Japanese sweets. And when Japanese sweets is in front of her, let's say that you try to take it away from her, she's so angry. That little fluffy dog that was so cute, it's like you cannot come close to it because it's so scary. Like her teeth is coming out. It's like, it's unbelievable that a princess turns into something so vicious like that, like a tiger. You see, so animals, they show their anger real quickly. That's an animalistic tendency. But human beings, again, we have the dignity. We have the power to control our emotions. And that's when you need to do it. Calm your anger. Try to keep a peaceful mind at all times. How to do it? Master give us 4 virtues to practice. Endurance, broad-mindedness, generosity, and forgiveness. How to fight anger? Endurance, broad-mindedness, generosity, and forgiveness. By using these 4 virtues, we can fight against anger or reflect on our anger. Lastly, ignorance. Ignorance means you're not living in accordance with truth or God's truth. So it's not like 3-dimensional knowledge ignorance, but spiritual knowledge ignorance. So, that's why it leads to the second of the way to protect yourself from falling to hell is studying the books of truth. To conclude, we're almost reaching the conclusion, I would like to show you an excerpt of Master Okawa's lecture on this book. It's about 10 minutes, but he explains the virtue of receiving these books, and also Happy Science produces a lot of movies. And watching Happy Science movies, how it's very helpful for us. So let us watch that video.
To have a peaceful heart while living on earth through self-reflection and prayer, or to become a human being who prays for the happiness of others, this is very important. Those who do not believe in the other world sometimes possess their descendants after they died and stay on earth. This is troublesome. They are not trying to make their descendants unhappy, but it happens as a result. the descendants that are possessed by their family would somewhat be disliked by the people around them. If a family gets a series of accidents or suffers from the same disease, generation upon generation, it may mean that the spirits of deceased are still on earth. In such a case, it is impossible to solve them without the help of religious power. Please attain the religious enlightenment by all means. Even if it is caused by their late parents or grandparents, it is completely unacceptable to possess the descendants and bring them misery. If family members from generation to generation meet with accidents or suffer the same disease, for example, everyone dies of cancer, it shows there must be a lost spirit of a deceased that is possessing the descendants. There definitely is lost spirits at such a home. In such a case, studying the truth at home on your own is not enough. Ordinary believers are helpless against lost spirits who remain at home. It is important to go to a local branch or temple. You probably think, it is tiresome to go to the temple. If you live far from it, it can take hours by car to get there. That can make you think that it's enough just to read books at home, but that is a shallow amateur understanding. It is important that you listen to lectures and study the truth properly, while having guidance from the ministers who train properly and receive spiritual energy from El Cantare. Also, the light within you will be stronger by being in places with Dharma friends around you. Then the spirit possessing you will start to say, "What? Oh no, you go to temple every week? You go there every month? It's too bad. If you do such a thing, I also have to listen to Master Okawa's video lectures every time. This is a disastrous situation for me." The possessing spirit will become disgusted to be with you. Therefore, please do not be lazy. Please go to the branch or temple regularly as possible. Since happy science temples are full of light, possessed spirits can be expelled even by just making the habit of going there. Some Dharma friends emit light, so when you become friends with such people, the lost spirits will go away. You might have a family strife whilst trying to go to temple. This is because evil spirits affect your family member. The possessed family member becomes violent. A lost spirit makes a family member go into a rampage in order to stop you from going to temples. People may say, "You are crazy for getting involved with happy science and joining their religious ceremonies." Or, "You must be insane to travel hundreds of miles to listen to a lecture. You should not be spending that much money on transportation." But that is wrong. To receive spiritual light is really important. Your soul will be purified by that. So please go to temples repeatedly. Many of you probably think that reading a book or borrowing others without buying your own is fine. However, please remember that just having and carrying the book with you gives you power. Please know that. It is like holding a scroll of holy scriptures. Just having them protects you spiritually. So please buy books as much as possible and keep them with you. I believe you have many unnecessary things. You must have many things that you didn't need to buy or read. Please cut spending on those unworthy, worldly items. Please cut off the unnecessary things from the viewpoint of the other world or your spiritual training, and prioritize to spend money for things that is essential for your discipline. That is important. I also really want as many people as possible to watch our movies. There will be people who watch it many times by themselves. This also has spiritual merit. While watching it many times, we receive the light from heaven and connect to the guiding spirits of happy science. This is for sure. This is important for those who have weak or no faith. Heavenly light sinks into the soul by repeatedly watching. The reverse is also true. If you watch spiritually bad movies, you may be affected by that. I might have said this before, as it was a long time ago. I watched the movie Spirited Away. It was a smash hit movie. There was a boy who transforms into a white dragon in that movie. I only saw it at the cinema, but when I came home, the spirit of a white dragon came to my house, saying, I am the white dragon of Atogayama. I have never been to Atogayama Shrine, so I had no idea, but he came to see me. A white dragon certainly appeared in the movie, and he followed me only because I watched it. This means that you can build a spiritual connection just by watching a movie. I had to speak with that white dragon, but his spiritual vibration was not very good. After all, that is a movie of minor heaven. It became a big hit, and tens of millions of people watched it, and it received nationwide reputation. However, we must let more people watch the movie of truth or enlightenment. There are many movies that are hellish or without any value. It is meaningless for them to become popular. The effort of making enlightened movies popular and having people watch it truly contains spiritual merit. Please understand that this is such a valuable and crucial activity for a lot of people. It is not a profit-making activity. Please understand that it is not the same as watching a movie for $15. Watching TV is useless. You cannot know what is right or wrong by watching talk shows. I want you to study something that helps you build up your life by reading valuable books, carefully and repeatedly. Your awareness for money may be worldly, but please change that way of thinking. Please cut the cost of unnecessary items, or please avoid spending on poisonous things for your soul, and use money for what is important to the soul. This is not a waste. By all means, I want you to do so. I have been publishing a lot of books, but that's not enough. After all, if people do not read or spread them, there is no point to publish them. You may say there are too many books to read, but I would say, please stop reading other useless material. Please buy and read the books of truth. If you read it at a cafe, other people may see its cover and become interested to buy it. It will be an opportunity to do missionary work. Even if you read it on a train, you can do missionary work. Please change your mindset. It is not enough to only publish books. If only the same people are reading the salvation movement, it will never be achieved. It will not save others. Now, I am sincerely asking that we must spread the teachings and books more and more. You can give a book of truth. Firstly, you have to recognize that the books must spread. It can be expanded by word of mouth, and you can invite people by holding a study group. We also encourage watching our movies, but it is different from activities, like a company's sales quota. It's not that kind of thing at all. It's really valuable. Although I also have published books overseas, only a few print on demand or books that are printed on an order basis have been sold. We have not reached the point that it becomes a bestseller in the bookstores. We need to have more power as an organization. It is important that a certain number of people exist as believers, not as ghosts, but as actual believers. It is also very important to participate in activities while making the habit of going to a temple in order to be a real believer. Although it will take some time, there are many useless things. Please cut them out and make time for happy science. Please cut down the waste in this world as to make money and create the budget for happy science. I think that the money you use for our group is not such a big amount. I'd like to ask you to switch your values. I would like all the Japanese to read this book about hell, and I also want international people to read it. I really hope so. Please convert your mindset. I strongly urge you to change this kind of religious mind.
Thank you very much. So, you know how Master said, please read my books carefully or something like that. I love reading Master's books carefully. Because Master's books, it's in colloquial, like speaking language. It's very easy to read through if you want to read it really quickly. You can zip through it, actually. But the reason why I like to underscore it is because, you know, it's the words of a master of masters. So some of his sentences come out as if it's like a holy, you know, sentence from a Bible or like a Buddha's scripture. Like it's like so much meaning in this one line. Like, you know how I was expressing, knowing is immense power. Knowing is immense power. You can zip through that, right? Oh, knowing's important. But like I squiggle it, I put like this little parentheses, I put a, you know, star mark on it, and I put a little post-it on it, and like it helps me absorb his teachings much more. So I really recommend you reading Master's books like this. And in Happy Science, New York, I'm planning on starting something called a Happy Science reading log. Hikari, could you pass it out to everyone? It was there. I'm sorry. It was on that table. No? Yeah, Happy Science Reader's Log. So it's only for people who are interested in doing this journey of Happy Science Reading Log. So as you know, in Happy Science, we have a lot of books, 2,500 books published. In English, over 100. So only over 100 in English. We have some in German too. Yeah. But what I would like you to do is, if you're up to it, it's totally fine. This is a reading log for Happy Science books. So in each page, you can write about 3 books. But the first one, you write, you know, like for each one, you write the book title. And then the next little section right here is, this book in 1 sentence. This book in 1 sentence. For me, this book, The Hell You Never Knew, in 1 sentence, it would be a must read for modern people. That would be this book in 1 sentence. And then like the date start, date finish, I mean, if you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that. But then the most important one is this next section, the biggest one, lessons or wisdom attained. Lessons or wisdom attained. Master once taught us that when we go back to the spiritual world after death, of course we bring back what we thought. But what sparkles in the thoughts that we've accumulated on earth is the wisdom that you've attained. And this wisdom is what makes people an angel. So if you would like not to fall to hell, but become an angel or higher than the highest part of 6th dimension and above in the spiritual world, attaining wisdom is very important. Happy Science does not focus about spiritual power, being able to read people's minds or tarot card readings or that, no. It's the wisdom that's going to truly be able to help and change your life. And all of this wisdom is so condensed in this book. So you can start, if you're like, please start doing this. And after you've read 3 books or so, at the bottom, minister's recommendation and comments. I would love to have like one-on-one interviews with our members. Like, you know, what did you learn from this book? And maybe like I can make a recommendation. Or if you like this, you can go ahead and start reading this book. Because I've read all of pretty much all of Master's books, so I can always recommend you what to go next. So if you would like to have like an individual, even a phone call, if you live far away, feel free to talk to me or Mariko anytime, so we can recommend you like a book that you should read or you would like. So for those who are willing to acquire more wisdom, I just made this as a reading log. So if you would like to start, please go ahead. And lastly, one of our members, Annette, she definitely reads, I would say like 80%, 90% of the English books that's been published. Too much? 70? 70 to 80%.
They're publishing books quicker these days.
That's true. But 70 to 80% of the books she's read, and she finished reading The Hell You Never Knew. And so, you know, this is for YouTube for like non-members, and this book is sold all over in Barnes & Nobles and Amazon. So I just wanted you to speak about what you felt from reading this book in the end.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi. I hope everyone had such a lovely workshop about hell. It was a lot of fun information, right? Raise your hand that you still feel kind of scared about hell, because now you know more. You feel kind of scared? So I guess more people are like, oh, I know more, now I want to utilize this knowledge, right? Good. I think the biggest thing that's important from learning from this book is to understand that your life as a human being is super, super precious. Because if you think about it, if every single person that's in hell takes about 200 to 300 years to realize that they were mistaken in their mind, imagine as a human being, you could switch your mind literally tomorrow in 1 day in 24 hours. That's very quick. And that's a huge mind shift for me too, because in Happy Science, we learned that things happen instantly in heaven and hell. Like what you think happens like this. But then as a human, it takes time, it takes effort. And then you're like, why isn't it happening? But then in reality, when it comes to your mistakes, you can fix it in 24 hours or even less, depending how much you worked on yourself and disciplined yourself and self-reflected. So the value of self-reflection and understanding this book intensified a lot, because then you can help other people who are mistaken in their thoughts too, because the more you work on yourself and self-reflection and understand where your mistaken thoughts are, then you can help identify those pain points for other people too, right? So being human is so, so precious. Like a really interesting example I hear about all the time in Christianity especially, there's always going to be people that end up in jail, but they're only in jail for like, what, 10 years, 20 years, and then they find Jesus in that cell because they were by themselves, they were isolated, and they become a different person. So before they die, they're probably going to go to heaven because they changed their mind, they changed their virtues, they changed their thoughts. Isn't that a wonderful thing to understand that, oh, like literally tomorrow I could become a new person. Tomorrow I don't have to have these hellish thoughts anymore. Tomorrow I can be connected to heaven. Or you could change it like in the next 10 minutes. It depends on you and depends where you are. So I think it's such a wonderful, wonderful thing that we got these teachings from Happy Science, that the more we understand hell, the more we can understand ourselves and how we have to self-reflect so we can become closer to heaven and understand Master's mind when we talk about more heavenly subjects and, you know, to best ourselves in this society. And thank you very much.
Once again, thank you, Annette, for sharing. Yes, our life is very precious. I like that take that you had. So today we talked about, we talked about 5 points: the general teachings of hell and happy science, the different hells, why it's important, which Annette really spoke about. It's connected to our daily life. That's why it's important, and how to avoid, and then Master's lecture on this book. Lastly, I would like to recommend this book because in this, Master says, Happy Science teachings are based on the actual observation of the world of hell. A new religion is necessary to deal with newly formed realms of hell like this one. So God loves humanity. He didn't love humanity just 2,000 years ago in the time of Jesus or 2,600 years ago in the time of Buddha. He's continually loving us. And now's the moment that his love is intensified to the greatest in the human history, because Master Okawa's consciousness is connected to El Cantare, the father of Jesus, rebirth of Buddha, and the Allah himself. All religions come from the same source, and now these teachings are being taught, and it's modernized. So if you're interested, you can always get a copy at your local temples, Amazon, or Barnes and Nobles. And this concludes our today's Sunday service. Thank you all so much for coming through the heat, the hell of scorching heat. I hope you can cool down before you go home. And again, thank you so much for coming this week. Next week, we're having an open workshop on healing from within. Very, very powerful lecture. It's going to be conducted by me and Mariko. And I don't think we're going to have enough seats in this room because we're getting a lot of RSVPs. So RSVP as quickly as you can. You can do it on the flyer that's outside. And I would like to wish you a very, very happy life in this that extends to the next. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you.